Melissa Jenkins was born on November 23, 1978, in Vermont, USA. She was working as a science teacher at an academy in Vermont. Aside from her teaching job, Melissa also coached the school's basketball team and was active in social events. She lived with her 2-year-old son and faced life's challenges alone. To make ends meet, she decided to work 2 jobs, spending her evenings and weekends as a waitress at a local restaurant. Despite her exhausting schedule, she always seemed content. However, on March 25, 2012, Melissa suddenly disappeared, and none of her friends could reach her. Throughout that evening, her friends tried to contact her, knowing she wouldn't be working and would be with her son. Concerned for her safety, Melissa's boyfriend called 911. The police then reached out to Melissa's friends and uncovered some odd circumstances. That night, Melissa called several friends, explaining she was experiencing car trouble. Despite the multiple calls, none of her friends could assist and no one heard from her again. When questioned by the police, her boyfriend mentioned he had searched for Melissa that night, but found no trace of her. He noted that her voice had sounded strange on the phone, which worried him after their conversation ended. Eventually, it was her boyfriend who located her car abandoned on Goss Hollow Road, an uncommon route for her. The car was still running, with no sign of Melissa inside, but the most alarming detail was her child remaining strapped in the back seat. Upon making this disturbing discovery, her boyfriend immediately alerted the police, providing all the details. When the police arrived, they removed the child from the scene and found footprints, stains, and unidentified tire marks around the car, indicating a possible struggle. A baseball cap found at the front of the car did not belong to Melissa. The police grew increasingly suspicious upon finding Melissa's cell phone at the end of the tire tracks, crushed and unusable, offering little valuable information. A pivotal piece of evidence in the investigation was Melissa's 2-year-old son, as it was believed he may have witnessed what occurred that night. Initially placed with Melissa's family, detectives shifted their focus to Melissa's boyfriend, who gave conflicting statements during questioning. Melissa's brother disclosed that her boyfriend wanted a serious relationship, while Melissa was not ready for such a commitment with a young son. Allegations emerged that the boyfriend had pressured her to commit more fully, prompting detectives to compare his boot tread patterns with those found at the scene, ultimately eliminating him as a suspect. The following day, investigators brought in a detective specialized in interviewing children to speak with Melissa's son. They wanted him to recount what he remembered from the night his mother went missing. The boy shared crucial details about the incident, mentioning that his mother was attacked by 2 people. When asked further, he demonstrated by clutching his throat and said, "Mommy cried." Following this troubling disclosure, the focus shifted to Melissa's ex-husband, who lived around 100 kilometers away. Even though he was thoroughly questioned, he had a solid alibi for that night, promptly clearing him of suspicion. The investigation advanced to meticulously searching Melissa's home, examining every corner of the property. Despite their thorough efforts, there were no signs of a struggle, leaving them at a standstill. However, during the search, they noticed a seemingly insignificant detail: a business card for Alan and Patricia Prue's snow removal service. Although its relevance was initially unclear, upon further scrutiny, it appeared to be recently acquired. As the investigation deepened, the detectives grew more convinced that Melissa was no longer alive, mentally preparing for the worst-case scenario. The evidence surrounding the vehicle indicated that the perpetrators had intended to harm Melissa and showed no intention of leaving her unharmed. Search efforts were extended to every possible location where evidence could have been disposed of, such as ditches, yet each search turned up empty. Approximately 24 hours after the vehicle's discovery, a breakthrough in the case occurred. A local resident contacted the police from a nearby boat dock, reporting a suspicious sight while fishing. The detectives hurried to the location. As they approached the mysterious object in the water, they realized it wasn't just an object but a woman's body, Melissa Jenkins. They were unable to immediately retrieve the body from the water, prompting the involvement of a dive team for further investigation. Melissa's body had been anchored to the bottom with construction stones and thick ropes. With considerable effort, they successfully recovered her body. Although images from the scene remained confidential, it was disclosed that Melissa had been placed face down in the water. Every piece of evidence from the site was transferred back to the headquarters. Sticks and brush were used to obscure the body's location in the water, indicating that the attack had been carried out in a disorganized manner and that the perpetrators were ill-prepared for their actions. The autopsy revealed that Melissa's body was covered in bruises and had numerous severe injuries, indicating the repeated use of a stun gun and death by manual strangulation. These details suggested a close, personal attack, which didn't align with the evidence the detectives had collected. Initially, they thought it was a random assault. To gather more information, the detectives retraced Melissa's steps from that day and looked into whom she had spoken to that evening. Phone records showed a call to Melissa from a prepaid phone around 8:30 p.m., which stood out because the phone had been used only for that one call, prompting the detectives to investigate further. They traced the phone to the store where it was purchased and discovered it was bought with a check signed by Patricia Prue, whose name matched the business card found in Melissa's home. Surprisingly, Alan and Patricia Prue showed up at the police station the same day, eager to speak with the officers. Patricia claimed her identity had been stolen and suspected her ex-husband was involved. When Melissa Jenkins was mentioned, the Prue couple admitted to knowing her and being friends, although they hadn't seen her recently. They used to meet for work during the winter months, a fact corroborated by Melissa's friends and family. Initially friendly with the Prues, Melissa had distanced herself from them due to Alan's unwelcome romantic advances. Despite his repeated requests for a date, Melissa always turned him down, leading to the termination of their business relationship. The Prue couple was allowed to leave the station that day, but were kept under police surveillance in the following days. Subsequently, detectives reviewed the security footage from the store where the phone was bought, capturing both Alan and Patricia on camera, as expected. During the interrogation, Alan mentioned he had gone to a restaurant that evening, and the detectives requested the surveillance footage. Upon reviewing it, they came across an unexpected piece of evidence. The hat found next to Melissa's car was actually worn by Alan that day. Subsequently, the couple was brought in for questioning again and interrogated separately. While Patricia denied any involvement in the crime, Alan crumbled under pressure. According to Alan, Patricia was bisexual, and they had started seeking excitement in their relationship. This led them to invite others into their bedroom, with Melissa becoming their targeted next guest. They misled Melissa by claiming to have relationship problems and seeking her support. Unaware of their true intentions, Melissa agreed to meet with them. However, upon her arrival, Alan's attempted seduction was met with resistance from Melissa. Subsequently, Patricia intervened and tragically ended Melissa's life in a matter of seconds. They then placed the body in the car and deliberated on their next steps. Amidst the chaos, panic ensued when they noticed Melissa's young son observing them from the back seat, unbeknownst to them previously. Alan, not recognizing his actions that night, maintained his innocence by insisting his intention was never to kill. Instead, he claimed that Patricia, in a sudden fit of rage, was responsible for the murder. Although he confessed his involvement and was willing to accept any punishment, asserting he never intended to take a life, their blame-shifting behavior continued until the trial. At the trial, both parties sought to shift the blame, leaving the true mastermind behind the murder undetermined. Nevertheless, the jury found both guilty, resulting in a life sentence for the couple. Before we dive into our next story, if you could take a moment to hit that like button, it would mean the world to us. A single click for you is a huge boost of encouragement for us. Haley Anderson, born on May 9, 1995 in Westbury, New York, was known for her unwavering support for friends, her cheerful demeanor, and her attentive listening skills. She pursued her dream of becoming a nurse at Binghamton University, aiming to make a difference in people's lives during their most vulnerable moments. She was determined, and her passion led her to be accepted into the nursing program. On the evening of March 7, 2018, Haley and her roommates gathered to play board games late into the night. However, the next morning, her roommate Josie texted Haley and received no response, assuming she was still asleep. Throughout Thursday, all attempts to reach Haley went unanswered, causing her friends to worry. Despite promising Josie she would attend a poetry night that evening, Haley remained unreachable. Taking action on March 9, 2018, another roommate, Michelle, used the Find My Friends app to track Haley's phone to a friend's apartment on the west side of Binghamton. Orlando Tercero, originally from Nicaragua, aimed to follow in his father's footsteps as a doctor. He and Haley became close friends during her second year in the nursing program, frequently spending time together at off-campus parties and at Haley's apartment with her roommate Josie. Haley also had a boyfriend named Kevin, whom she met at university, but she had reservations about the seriousness of their relationship. At a party, she introduced Kevin to her friend Orlando, leading to an unexpected turn of events. One morning, after Kevin stayed over at Haley's apartment, he discovered slashed tires on her car, fueling Haley's suspicion of having an enemy. Haley confronted Orlando, believing he was involved, but he denied any wrongdoing. Despite Orlando's denial, Haley's mother, Karen, suspected him of having romantic feelings for her daughter. Following this incident, Haley distanced herself from Orlando, despite the encouragement of her friends and family to do the same. Eventually, she allowed him back into her life. On March 9th, the day Haley disappeared, marked 6 months since the tire slashing incident, with no reported problems during that time. Josie tracked Haley's location to a house and immediately called the police, informing them about finding Haley's phone and urging them to come quickly. While waiting for the police, they knocked on the door but were met with complete silence. They then noticed an open window. Michelle climbed in first, followed by Josie, and they discovered Haley's lifeless body in Orlando's bedroom. The police arrived shortly after and found disturbing evidence. Metal hooks had been screwed into the entryway with a tie threaded through them. A chair was positioned at the entrance, with gauze and paper towels scattered on the kitchen counter. There was also a suicide note written in Spanish. The author of the note expressed deep sorrow, apologized for his actions, and mentioned he would soon join his father, who had passed away 5 years earlier, confirming Orlando as the note's author. Based on the evidence, investigators concluded that Orlando had attempted to take his own life, but had failed, injuring himself in the process. Examinations of Haley's body revealed bruising around her neck and facial hemorrhages, indicating she had been strangled. Detectives, now treating the case as a murder investigation, identified Orlando Tercero as the person of interest and began searching for him, but he was nowhere to be found. That afternoon, police officers visited Karen's home to deliver the tragic news of Haley's death. Karen, Haley's mother, was unaware of her daughter's disappearance since they didn't communicate daily, only speaking on Sundays. As detectives delved into the investigation, they interviewed friends of both Haley and Orlando, with many acquaintances cooperating with the police. The findings pointed to Orlando's obsession with Haley, displaying jealousy and attempting to control her. He tried to isolate her from friends, acted possessively, and became angry when she spent time with others. With his tragic tales, Orlando managed to deceive Haley, manipulating her kind nature and gaining control over her. While authorities searched for Orlando, they first questioned his sister. On the day of the murder, Orlando had sent her messages admitting he had done something terrible that would bring shame to the family. He also told his sister that he had left his car at John F. Kennedy Airport which was crucial information for the detectives. Authorities began investigating Tercero's flight records and confirmed that he had flown back to his home in Nicaragua. They also reviewed the security camera footage at Orlando's apartment complex, where they discovered crucial evidence. The footage showed Haley entering the building early on the morning of March 8th, her final appearance tragically. 7 hours later, Orlando was seen leaving the apartment alone, raising suspicions about his whereabouts. Following a bill found at the scene, investigators traced Orlando to a pharmacy where he purchased 2 different brands of sleeping pills. 16 hours before Haley's body was discovered, Orlando left his residence for the airport, his head wrapped in a bandage as seen on camera, confirming his failed suicide attempt. Upon his arrival at the Nicaraguan airport, Orlando was greeted by his mother, Martha Moreno, who took him to her hometown and kept him hidden for a few days. They eventually left the house to seek medical attention for his injuries, but by then, the Nicaraguan police were already on his trail. Orlando was apprehended near the hospital on March 13, 2018, and his capture was announced publicly the following day. Although U.S. authorities requested Orlando's extradition, Nicaragua declined due to an agreement between the two countries that protects their citizens. Orlando's trial in Nicaragua began on October 1, 2019, with his family and friends present. The Binghamton detectives presented compelling evidence, including CCTV footage and a handwritten note found at the crime scene, to the judge. Orlando's defense attorney argued that his client was under the influence of alcohol and not in the right state of mind during the crime. The defense called Orlando's psychiatrist as a witness in an attempt to mitigate his punishment. On November 1, 2019, Orlando Tercero was found guilty of Haley's murder and sentenced to the maximum penalty in Nicaragua, 30 years in prison. Despite the overwhelming evidence presented, Orlando's friends staunchly maintained his innocence, believing he could not have committed such a horrific act. Before we conclude this video, please be aware that the video on the left may be disturbing. It is recommended for adult viewing only. On the right, you'll find a playlist of videos that have been highly appreciated by our viewers.